Hey, hi, hello. Welcome back to my channel. Today we are going to be once again doing another trope test. And if you've already looked at the title of the video, you know that today the trope is going to be desert settings. Okay, let's pause a minute. So I set out with really high expectations for this video. I've been filming this video for 6 months now, I think. Like, it's unattainable for me to read 7 books in one video. So my goal for this video was to read 7 books set in desert fantasy settings. I've read 4 of those books. I'm going to be doing this reading vlog on 4 of those books. One day I hope to read those other 3 that made it on this list, but I didn't actually get to. Get ready, buckle up. I'm going to be reading 6 desert fantasy books. Future Amanda here. It's actually going to be 7 books that I read for this video. Hopefully. Let's see how this goes. Setting is a weird thing to put into a trope test, but I'm really excited. I love desert fantasies, or so I thought. In the past, I did start Dune by Frank Herbert. I've started this book twice and DNF'd it twice. I'm never picking it up again. I did not like this book. The Horse and His Boy is a desert fantasy, and I love that book. I freaking love that book. I definitely see how it has some racist undertones to it. I read it as a small child, and now that's all I can see is that nostalgic feeling I had for it as a small child. I read The Rebel in the Sands a long time ago, and I remember hating it. Apparently, according to Goodreads, I rated it 1 star, which I don't even remember doing that. That was before BookTube, so I don't have anything to point to. I also started The Wrath and the Dawn and DNF'd it, but I think I DNF'd that one because I wasn't into the romance on it. I think I'd be willing to give this one another shot. I tried it like 6 or 7 years ago, I think right when it came out. I also read, and I read this last year, somewhere on my channel, I'll try to link the video if I remember which one it's in, 12 Kings and Sharakaya. I rated it 2 stars. I did not like this book either. I also read and hated Who Fears Death, rated that 1 star, and I am disgusted with the ending of that book. I also read The Girl, Fire, and Thorns, which I apparently rated 2 stars. I remember liking this more than what Goodreads says, so I'm a little bit confused by that. Oh, I started The Killing Boon by N.K. Jemisin and didn't like it and DNF'd it, and that's funny because I really like some of her other works, but just not that one. Of course, it's her desert fantasy that I'm not really liking. Are you starting to notice a pattern? Because I'm starting to notice a pattern. Of course, there's also Strange the Dreamer, which I absolutely loved and rated 5 stars, and I think that the desert setting was part of what I really loved about it. And Muse of Nightmares as well. You gotta throw that one in there too if you're gonna be talking about Strange the Dreamer. Yeah, I'm definitely starting to notice a pattern here, which is I think I like desert fantasies, but when I look back on them, there's a lot of them I haven't enjoyed. Today, I am going to be trying out 6 desert fantasies. The first book that I'm going to be reading for this challenge, I shouldn't say first, I'm going to be reading these in random order, so don't pay attention to the order that they're about to be presented in. The Empire of Sand by Tasha Suri. I'm really interested in this book because I saw Nicole from Nicole and Her Books reading this recently, and she loved it, and I've never wanted to pick it up because it is a fantasy romance, and I'm very iffy about fantasy romances. I think that they can be done well, and I think they can be done really not well, but she talked about the romance, and she used all of my like favorite words when talking about it. She was talking about how it doesn't impact the main plot of the story, but it's still there and it's still effective. She mentioned how it's a slow burn, which is my favorite thing ever. She talked about how it's an arranged marriage. Boy, oh, The Bridge Kingdom is also kind of a desert fantasy that has an arranged marriage. I'm getting sidetracked. Next, I'm going to be reading The Last Namsara by Kristen Cicarelli. Cicarelli? She's Slavic, so I'm saying it like an Italian would say it. I don't know how to say that one. Oh, I actually own this one already. I own Empire of Sand too, but I don't have the physical one to show you. So, the book's not in here right now. The book's somewhere else. The next book I'm going to be reading is The Golem and the Jinni. I'm going to be getting this one from my library. It looks so pretty. I'm so excited to go pick it up and hold it. It looks like a really good book. And this one has been read by a lot of people. It's a very famous, very popular book, but I think that's really odd because I feel like I haven't heard anyone talking about it. And the final book, the 7th book, because I realized too late that I forgot to include one on my list, is going to be The Unbroken by C.L. Clarke. Now, C.L. Clarke uses pronouns she, they, so if you get confused why I'm flipping between those 2 pronouns throughout the video, is because they use both. The Unbroken, let's talk about this, is a African, I believe it's West African inspired fantasy book, Black author, Black main character, and it does take place in a desert dwelling, so I'm Really excited to be adding this one to the list. Okay, let's talk about The Last Namsara, which is the first book that I've started for this challenge, and I am exactly 100 pages into it, and I'm loving it. I am loving it so freaking much. Actually, what's really funny about this video is I overlapped my book club's about to find out something. I overlapped this video concept with my theme, my book club's theme for the month of April. This video is going to be coming out way later than April, but every month in my book club, I give them a theme that they get to pick books from. And so in the month of April, the theme was desert fantasy, and I basically gave them a slight variation of the list for this video, and The Last Namsara was chosen, and I was so glad because I was hoping either this or Empire of Sand so that I could read it for this video and read it for book club. I am tabbing since it is for book club. I do prefer to tab, but I'm only doing a 1 color system instead of my normal 3 color system because I felt like this book didn't really lend itself into being my 3 color system, which is my hate love important. The Last Namsara is this story of this girl, Asha, and she is the daughter of the I don't know his title, but he's like the ruler of this land, and she is the, please remind me how to say the word, Iksari, and that means that she is the person who is sent out to hunt the dragons. And if you don't want to know anything else about this story, skip ahead like 20 seconds, but I'm about to say a few things that you find out in the first 100 pages just to help you understand the story a little bit better. She caused a terrible wrong in her past, and now she is sent out to hunt these dragons because her father basically blames her for the death of hundreds of thousands of people in their town because of the dragons attacking, because she would tell them stories and draw them in. So I don't know if it's just an ability that she has at this point, but the book starts out with Asha lured the dragon with a story. It was an ancient story older than the mountains at her back, and Asha had to dredge it up from where it lay deep and dormant inside of her. And I really love that concept of connecting storytelling to dragons, like connecting the storytelling to being the thing that draws dragons in. It's really, really fascinating. It's really well done. The world's kind of interesting because Asha is dealing with these big concepts of right and wrong. For instance, her whole entire family owns slaves, but her family is dealing with these other foreigners who think that owning slaves is wrong and that no one should do it. And Asha's kind of confronted with this idea of her whole entire life, you know, she's owned slaves, she's thought nothing of it. That's what those people are supposed to do. She was born this Iksari, and then her people were born into slavery, but she's starting to realize that it might not be that simple. So she's really kind of learning this like right or wrong. The desert setting definitely takes effect into the story. I've seen it really affect the people's clothing the most. They wear a lot of loose fitted clothing, and they live in like certain groupings that I tend to think of like as similar to desert dwellings, where you live in lots of like tents or palaces with lots of like open air, lots of open spaces in them, lots of like hanging drapery, lots of beautiful flower motifs. None of the characters have been described as their skin color or hair color, so I don't know, but our main protagonist is scarred over half of her body. The right half of her body is completely burned, so I think that that's really an interesting feature to have in your main protagonist, because I feel like so many times, especially with YA fantasy, your main protag is going to be like beautiful, but she doesn't know it, but she's like plain, but also the boys can't stop staring at her. Also, another thing that's really interesting about Asha is she is forced into an arranged marriage, and in the beginning you meet her fiance, and he is one of the worst people I have ever read about. Every time he's on page, I kind of get excited because I know that he's gonna push Asha into being like a badass bitch, but he is awful and I hate him and I wish he wasn't in this book. But also, like, he did a great job because I'm supposed to hate him and he's adding conflict to the story. But Asha's father kind of makes her a deal where if she hunts down this one specific dragon, she won't have to marry this man, and she of course takes him up on it. So she has to find this dragon within like 6 days, but of course other things are happening too. And I highly recommend the audiobook. The narrator, I can't remember her name right now, but she is doing a phenomenal job, and she is a Black woman, which is really exciting. Love supporting that. So I don't know if you can see the color difference between this page and this page, but there are these story sections of these like ancient stories, which a lot of them actually aren't as old as you think they are, and it's kind of helping build the world and helping you understand a lot of the characters. I finished The Last Namsara. I should probably put the Dutch jacket back on. I really enjoyed myself overall for the most part. I think that the strengths of this book were its overall uniqueness. I felt like it had a really different plot, a really different world, a really different setup, really different characters from any other book that I have read before. I really liked most of the characters, although I felt like they were actual people, well-rounded people who I had likes and dislikes for almost every single one of them. It wasn't like I was absolutely in love with one of them over the others. There were some characters I hated more than the others, but that was obviously a decision that I was supposed to have. I also think that the building was absolutely fantastic. This idea that you can tell stories and it attracts dragons, but dragons are also made of stories, like, that is so cool and so interesting and something that I really haven't experienced ever before. I will say though, tabbing wise, I tabbed a lot in the beginning, and as the book went on, I just kind of stopped tabbing. Not because I was like, oh, I'm not gonna tab anymore, but simply because there was nothing to tab as the book went on. Like, I really honestly think the majority of the plot happened where I wasn't tabbing, and I don't tend to tab for plot things so much, especially if I'm just doing one color. I'm gonna tab for more beautiful or interesting things instead. That's kind of an odd one there, and I know you can't see it super well, so you'll have to take my word for it, but all of the little gray stories that are being told, majority of them were told, actually all of them were told in the first 50% of the book. There were none after, there was one around 60%. They were my favorite part, so I think that that's partially why I'm about to say what I'm about to say. I didn't absolutely love it though. It wasn't a 5-star book. I rated it 4 out of 5 stars, and I think that the majority reason why it doesn't get that last star for me is the pacing was off. There were times where it felt really slow, and there were times where it felt really fast, and it just didn't seem to have this balance. And anytime I was getting into the groove or the swing of things, it would kind of change its pacing on me, and I'd be like, whoa. Resolution of the whole entire book happens in like less than a chapter, and it happened so quickly that I was honestly like, wait, what? And then there were like 3 or 4 more chapters where it was like a really slow conclusion to our main character's other non-main plotline story. And I was like, so our main plotline gets 1 chapter to wrap up, but the romance gets 3 or 4 chapters to wrap up. I'm confusion. So I started the Unbroken today, and this is the one that was supposed to be on the list but forgot to be added to the list, and then now I'm having it back on the list, and I'm really glad I'm reading it. I'm trying to open a box while I talk to you guys, and I always regret this decision later on in life. Yeah, I started a while ago. I don't remember, okay, I can't open this box. And I don't remember how long ago that was, but I got the arc for the book, and then I read the first chapter and it didn't pull me in, so I was reading through a few of my arcs and I found a different one that I wanted to read, so I read that one instead, which I'm glad happened because now I can include it in this video. So once the book got published, I actually downloaded the audiobook for it, and I'm listening to it now, and I'm really happy. I'm kind of glad I did it. My only complaint right now is that, so the story takes place in this African-inspired town, and I cannot remember how it's pronounced right now, or any of our characters' names, unfortunately. I'm only at the end of chapter 3 going into chapter 4, and I'm so bad with names, but it's in this African-inspired city, and so this culture is basically like back in the day when France took people from Africa and brought them back home and kept them completely away from their culture. So it's based on like realistic events that have happened, following this one main girl who is a soldier, and when she was a small child, she was taken away from her home. She is Black, and she was brought and raised up in this like white civilization in the forest, in the woods, and now she is being sent back to where she was born, and she's supposed to lead a military troop that is supposed to quash the rebels. And basically the idea is that the soldiers above her have kind of decided that since she looks like the people that she is trying to stop, that maybe the regular citizens will see like, oh, we can actually succeed in this empire. We can succeed if these white people take us over, because look, we can see people who look like us in leadership roles. We're also following the girl, I don't know what her title is, but she's trying to become empress, and her uncle, I believe right now, is on the throne, and he's kind of questioning whether or not she should move up in position. And I think the 2 girls are going to work together to try to help each other. I should say women, they are adults. This is an adult fantasy book. It is not YA. I don't know what is up with Goodreads and why it keeps calling it YA. It is not YA. Going back to my one complaint. My one complaint is certain characters have this like ridiculous French accent and I can't get past it. I'm like, what are you saying? Who? What? I can't understand it and I don't know what they're trying to say to me, and I'm a little lost when they speak. But otherwise, I'm really enjoying the story, and I think it's going to be really hard hitting and impactful. With what I've already said, I don't see how it couldn't be. Like, right, this is going to be a big one. And there's also definitely going to be some type of magic that is going to be happening. I don't know what it is yet because it's very taboo and very not spoken of, but I'm thrilled to learn more about it because our main character seems to have something and she like doesn't understand it herself. Now, how the desert setting takes place, it is important to the story. Actually, I think this one, it might be one of the most important ones to its book because we have this whole entire civilization where our young girl was taken from and then she was raised and now is being brought back to it. I think that it's going to be really, really important in how our characters deal with it, and we're already seeing how our main character is kind of struggling to like relive back in with all this sand. Like she was talking about when she came inside, she like sand just kept coming off of her and kept coming off of her, and how she wasn't prepared for how cold it would be at night in the desert, and how people who look like her assume she can speak the language there because she looks like them, but she can't speak the language. So when I moved, I ended up losing a lot of the footage for this video, so I'm going to be reenacting it, which means that if some of this footage looks the same, no it doesn't, mind your own damn business. I made it about 30% through the Unbroken, and I'm not loving it anymore. It's just so slow. Like nothing is really happening. It's just these two women who are like slowly learning to trust each other somewhat and then slowly like not learning to trust each other. Anyways, I decided to go online and read some reviews, and a lot of people said that they had the same issue with this book, but they said if I could make it to the 50% mark from there on, it was just absolutely amazing. So that's what I'm gonna try to do, is sit down and just make it to the 50% mark now. It's not honestly that much longer. I have the audiobook, so I'm gonna stick my headphones in, go for a walk, and try to finish it up. So I'm back and I've made it to the 40% mark, and my dudes, I just don't think I can finish this book. I don't hate it. It just comes back down to the I'm bored. And if I have to read 50% of a book to actually get to the good part of the book, I'm really trying to be good on myself and allowing myself to quit and be okay with that, because not all books are going to be winners for all peoples. I definitely think this book has a lot of merit, but I think the writing was actually very good and the characters were great. It just needed some more plot to it. I am filming this video like so out of order. But I've officially started the Golem and the Jinni, which I wasn't expecting to enjoy as much as I have so far. I've only read one chapter, but one chapter was like 5%, I think. Like they're really long chapters, and the book is pretty long too. I think it's like 20 hours. It has this like slow narrative, like this man with just a really relaxing voice, I'm listening to the audiobook, is just reading this story to me, and I'm here for it. So far it's really all been set up. I still haven't even met like one of the perspectives of the book, but I'm gonna talk to you about the Golem, and I just wanted to do that before I even like stopped, because I'm pretty much going to put my headphones on and just go sit in the bath and listen to it for a while now, and I just don't know if I'll be able to stop and talk to you because nakedness. We've had the introduction of the Golem, and everything that I read has already been said in the summary, but I'm going to tell it to you anyways again. So the Golem is a girl who was brought to life by this, like, I think they called him like a dark magic rabbi, I don't fully know. So this man came to this rabbi, and this man is basically unwanted, awful, like not just in looks but also like in personality. No one wants him, no one wants to be around him, but he really wants a wife. So he hires this rabbi, lots of money. He has lots of money to hire the rabbi. Now the rabbi has lots of money to create a golem that could become his wife. So he wants it to be a womanly figured, somewhat intelligent creature. So golems are creatures made of clay that do their master's bidding, and normally they are like mounds of clay kind of animated into being, whereas this main girl, Chara, I haven't learned her name yet in the book, looks like a human, feels like a human, acts like a human, but has like ungodly strength and has certain characteristics that this man gave to her. So a golem has to do whatever their master wants, and has to do, like, even thought-wise, like the golem can understand what their master thinks. So this man wakes up his bride on the way to America. I forget where he was in Europe, but he's on his way to America, and he wakes her up and then dies. and she is left with no master. So the magic that made her work makes everyone her master. And so she can literally understand everyone around her, their biggest wishes, their wants, their desires. And where I'm at, she's just kind of struggling to figure out which one she's going to follow and what's going to happen. But she has arrived in America. And so I'm hoping that now I'm gonna get a chapter of the Jinni. It's just atmospheric, but also like descriptive, but also like there's a story. I'm digging it. So I am approximately 35% through the Golem and the Jinni, and I just wanted to come and discuss with you. So I think last time I talked to you, I was only like one chapter in, which was maybe 5%. So I have met both of the characters at this point, and I've been like well introduced into them and into their lives. What's really interesting about this book is while we are definitely following two main characters, we get like really in-depth backstories for all of our side characters. So there'll be like whole chapters just about side characters and how they became who they became. And I think that that's what's making the story like really slow going, but also I'm really enjoying it and I'm really liking all that we're learning. And a lot of the side characters actually have these stories that are really emotional and really impactful. I think it's really funny because as I was reading it, I think I'm so used to YA fantasy that I automatically assumed that the Golem, who was a female, and the Jinni, well, he goes by Jinni. I had to Google it to try to figure out the difference. I'm very confused, honestly, still. I assumed because our two main characters are both of the opposite gender, you know, one female, one male, that they were automatically going to be in a romantic relationship together. But YA fantasies are not the only books that are out there, because it's very obvious to me where I'm at now at 35% that these two characters are not going to have any kind of romantic involvement. They haven't met each other yet, but they literally wouldn't get along. Like, they would not be any type of romance between them. Our main female, the Golem, has really no romantic interest in anyone. Like I said, to please her master, and because she doesn't have a master, she's trying just to please as many people as possible, and she's trying to fight that urge by just doing what's best for herself. She's taken up a position at this bakery where I'm at, and she's just working her life away, and she's very happy doing it, and she's bringing goodness into the world. And then our Jinn is working for this, I don't remember the word, but like a metal worker, and he's fallen in love with this human woman. I don't even know if love's the right word, but like fallen in lust with this human woman who he has random dalliances with, and she's engaged to this human man, and she does not love her partner, because at this time, you know, she's basically being married off as like a political thing, like because they're both wealthy families, and so they just kind of randomly have these like moments where they can get away from their normal lives. And it's interesting book. I'm enjoying it. There was definitely around the 10% mark where I was like, okay, I'm a little bit bored with this, but once we started getting into more of the side characters' stories, I was like, okay, yeah, I get it. I'm interested again. This is good. I have no clue what I'm going to rate this book, because it really just seems to be almost like a slice of life for these two mythical beings who are having to live as humans. Like, it's kind of an odd book. I don't read a lot of historical fiction, and I don't read a lot of paranormal books, and it's kind of like those two together. And so I don't know if this is like a common thing that people enjoy reading or not, but I'm enjoying this one. I don't know if I would enjoy it if it was super YA, to be honest. It's very adult. Not that like the themes or anything are super adult, just the way it's written, it's obviously an adult book. Like, there's no explicit cursing or no explicit on page sex scenes. There's no explicit violence or anything like that, but it's an adult book. And I am enjoying it, but I don't know if I would ever read anything like this again. Like, next time I talk to you, unless anything crazy happens in the book, will be when I have finished it. What, I have 65% still? It can't just be them working their jobs the rest of their lives, right? I have officially finished The Golem and the Jinni. And let's just get my rating up front. I rated it a 3.5 out of 5 stars. There were times when it leaned more towards a 4, and there were times when it leaned more towards a 3, but this is why I do 0.5s anyways, is because sometimes books just don't fit for me. Is that one of my paintings fell? Hold up. The book was not a slice of life for the rest of the book. It was for a good majority of the book, just like a slice of life of these two paranormal beings pretending to be humans in their daily lives, going about doing their things. Eventually the two characters met, and it was really good friendship between the two of them, because what kind of ended up happening, not super spoilery, is that the Golem, because she is female presenting, couldn't go out at night during this time period because women would have been taken advantage of, let's be real, are still being taken advantage of at night. She ends up meeting up with the Jinn, and she can tell that like something is not quite right about him, so they kind of connect through their paranormal bonds. And so he offers to be her walking partner at night so that she doesn't have to just be like held up in her home because she doesn't sleep. This works out really well for the two of them. They become really good friends, but it leads to some problems later on. Eventually, some crazy shit happens in the book. The last like 20% of the book where the like actual bad guy like becomes a thing was insane. Honestly, I kind of feel like forcing a plot into the story almost ruined it. I don't want to say it was forced. Like, I can see from the beginning now how the plot was like leading up to this bad guy doing the things that he did. But when it was happening, when I was reading it, when I was just looking at the part where like the plot climaxes, I was like, what? This kind of came out of nowhere, and I feel like this is the worst part of the book. Best part of the book, like I've said before, was the side characters' backstories. There is this one side character that I almost cried when I heard his backstory. He's the ice cream man, if you've read this book. I did genuinely enjoy this book. There is now a sequel out. I don't think I would read it though. I think that this one was like a one and done. It's good. It's done. That's all I wanted. It's such out of my normal comfort zone and out of my normal genre reading that I don't think I would be interested in reading like another 20 to 30 hour audiobook of this type of book. But for the one that it was, I liked it. And finally, we've made it to the final book in this video, which is Empire of Sand. No, I'm not gonna mess with y'all. I lost all of the footage for this book. I had a few different updates where I was telling you kind of how I was feeling while reading this book, and right now I am too tired to try and reenact them. So instead, I'm gonna kind of tell you what my thoughts were while I was going, and we're gonna stop pretending that I'm live reading this book with you. It's been months since I finished this actually. I just now realized I've lost the footage. Empire of Sand is this story of this woman who is sent off into an arranged marriage with this man. Now what's kind of interesting is our main girl she's half from this ruling family line. She is a nobleman's daughter, so she is pretty high up, but she's also half from her mother's line, which is this like magic wielding, less respected people. And so she believes in magic and demons and monsters and all of that kind of stuff, whereas her stepmother and her father don't. She has a young sister who is kind of growing up with her and is kind of struggling between understanding her people and being respected by her elders. And anyways, the story is mainly about our main girl. She's sent off to be married, and when she's sent off, she is finally, for the first time in her life, really getting to experience her other half of her culture, her mother's side, and what they're experiencing. But there are some tricks and some complications and some problems, and it's a slow burn romance, enemies to lovers, very slow book overall. I physically read the first 100 pages, and I really, really enjoyed those pages. I felt like I was getting into the story, I was understanding the world building, I really liked the relationship between our main character, whose name I cannot remember, and her sister. But after that, I ended up switching to the audiobook because I needed to be wrapping the book up quicker than I was able to do, and it was while I was moving to this place, so I was more able to listen to audiobooks than I was able to physically read. So I ended up not enjoying it from then on out, and I'm really not sure if it is because of the audiobook, if it's because the story ended up slowing down a lot more then, or if it just kind of took a turn I wasn't totally expecting. When I started listening to the audiobook, it kind of takes our main character away from the city that she had been in and changes the story into she's learning a lot more about her people and her background and magic, and there's this kind of like dance magic that she's learning about. Didn't care about that like at all, and I do think that it was because the story slowed down and it wasn't kind of going where I thought it was going to be going, and I just couldn't be bothered to care about these characters anymore. I ended up reading this book a 2.5 out of 5, I'm pretty sure. Yeah, it was a 2.5 out of 5 stars. I enjoyed aspects of it, and I would recommend this to a lot of people, but it was not one for me, and I felt more bored with the story than I felt intrigued by the story. But the desert fantasy of this is so important to the story. There are elements that affect the plot, such as sandstorms, that really affects the culture and the people. It is very obvious that our author, Tasha Suri, is writing about her own experience of this culture. Like, the culture is based off of her actual South Asian heritage, and I really enjoyed that, and I would pick up other books by her in the future, even though I felt kind of bored in this one. Her writing was good, I just needed her pacing to be a little bit faster for me to enjoy it, so I think that's something that can change from book to book. So for this video, I ended up reading 4 desert fantasies. I own physically 2 of them, so I can't hold up the other 2 that I also read. But starting from the top of my list and working my way down, so it's not in the order of how this video just appeared to you, I read Empire of Sand, which I ended up rating a 2.5 out of 5 star, but I do think that the desert was a beautiful and wonderful part of the story, and it was actually my favorite part of. Next, I read The Golem and the Jinni, which I enjoyed, but also felt like was very slow. Is that a theme in desert fantasies? I enjoyed this book, but I definitely had some issues with the pacing, but overall thought it was really good, really enjoyed it, would recommend this one to a lot of people actually. The Last Namsara, which I really enjoyed, but there were definitely also some issues with the pacing, especially around the last third of the book. It got really slow for kind of random reasons when it felt like the story should be climaxing and picking up. But overall, I liked this one a lot. It read the youngest out of all 4 of these that I read, and I would recommend this to more wider of a range of readers. I think if you're more of a fan of YA fantasy, this is the one from the list that you should check out. And then finally, I started and DNF'd the Unbroken. I think one day I'd like to try to return to this, but I say that so much that I'm kind of sick and tired of saying it, but this one, I just had an issue with the pacing and couldn't quite get through it. It is what it is, and not all readers will like all books. Let me know down below if you've read any of these books or what your favorite setting is in fantasy works, or if you have any recommendations for desert fantasy books. I've read a lot of them, to be honest, so try to find some that I haven't read and you'll win some brownie points, which do you know good in life. Thank you for watching. I appreciate each and every one of you. I don't remember how my outro goes, but until next time, I'll talk to you in the comments. Bye.